Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is Educational Podcasting Today, episode number 34. Today, we're going to be talking all about how you can use your podcast to build a community around your podcast, your brand, and your school district. I have a fantastic guest today. Today, we're going to be talking to author, podcaster, and world traveler, Danny Sunshine Bauer, all about how he's been building community around his brand and his podcast. But before we get into the interview today, I want to welcome you guys back to TeacherCast. We've got some great things happening. We have a brand new channel open up to help teach you and your students all about podcasting. If you go over to podcastingwithstudents.com, that's podcastingwithstudents.com, you're going to find all of our great resources on how to create amazing products, amazing lesson plans, and how to do it in your classroom. So basically, we're going to be using this channel here to focus on you guys. We're going to be using it to help you guys learn how to create great lesson plans and how to really bring audio and video into your classroom. We're going to be doing some product reviews. We're going to be doing some app reviews. We're going to be talking a little bit about what makes this podcasting app great for your students and for your classroom. A little bit like we do on this show, but instead of having it just be focused on studio tech, we're going to be focused on everything in the classroom. We're still going to be using this podcast to kind of go back and forth of talking about, what makes your studio tick, what makes your classroom tick. And of course, we're going to spice in a little bit of, web design here and there. We got a lot of great guests that are going to be coming on. So check that out over on TeacherCast. That's podcastingwithstudents.com. We're going to make sure we have a link to that over in our show notes. So again, this is Educational Podcasting Today, episode number 34. We are looking to have you guys, and thank you for sharing. We're also looking forward to a lot of great conferences. We're going to be appearing this week at the NJEC conference. That's NJECC. Essentially, it is the Technology Directors of North Jersey Conference. We're looking forward to doing our TeacherCast podcasting workshop. That's going to be happening on Tuesday, January the 8th. I've got some great stuff. We're going to be doing our podcasting workshop at that conference. We're also going to be talking a little bit about how we do Google animations. And then on Thursday, my co-host Nick and I from our Tech Coach podcast are going to be there talking a little bit about how to create a great ed tech integration plan. If you're in the New Jersey area, check out the NJEC conference this week. And if you're going to be in Florida at the end of the month, we are going to be down there at the FETC conference. We are looking forward to getting down there. My first time at the FETC conference this year. I'm looking forward to it. We got some great things. I'm going to be involved in a panel discussion on Wednesday afternoon, talking a little bit about what it's like to be an educational entrepreneur. With a couple great friends. We'll talk a little bit about that as the time comes through. And then on Sunday afternoon, we're actually going to be working split seasons. We're going to be visiting and working with Microsoft Education at their Sunday event. It's always the pre-FETC event. I'm looking forward to that. And then in the afternoon, we've got another version, a little bit bigger, of our TeacherCast podcasting workshop. So if you're down there in Florida at the end of January this year, we're going to be doing some pretty cool things. And I have an even bigger announcement to share with you guys. We have been selected to present not one, but two sessions this year in Philadelphia at the ISTE conference. Guys, I am so excited about this. We have actually been given an opportunity to do our TeacherCast podcast as a 2.5 hour, I think, workshop, and on Monday afternoon as a full 1.5 hour lecture. I did that lecture last year talking a little bit about podcasting, how to do it, but I'm so excited that ISTE has chosen us to work not only as a workshop, but also as a full-blown lecture. I am looking forward to that. So if you guys are going out to ISTE this year, it's in my area, my backyard, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Drop me a line. You can always find us on Twitter. This show can be reached at Podcasting Today over on Twitter at Podcasting Today. And of course, you can check us out over on educationalpodcasting.today. And you know what? If you guys are looking for a great community, you can, of course, go over to educationalpodcasting.tips. We have almost gone over 400 educators in our Facebook group talking every day about podcasting lessons, everything that you guys are interested in if you're listening to this show. We want to have you guys be a part of the TeacherCast Educational Network in 2019. Now, I want to do a little bit before we get into our interview and introduce my friend and our guest today, Danny Bauer. Danny is an amazing friend of mine, guest, somebody who I always kind of lean on, look up to. We've had some great Voxer conversations, and we like to play Where in the World is Danny Bauer? Where did I speak with Danny Bauer? Where in the world was he? Well, I'm not going to give that away just yet. You're going to have to listen to the episode to figure that out. But Danny has an amazing book out there. He's also got a great website. He is the author and collaborator at the website called Better Leaders, Better Schools. And you can find out more about that going to betterleadersbetterschools.com. One of the things that we're going to talk about in our episode today is all about his newsletter and his mastermind and how he's using his email marketing skills and also his mastermind to not only grow a nice little side hustle. He's almost at 60 or 70 or so administrators working with him on a monthly basis. But he also is using it to inspire people. You know, we talk on our interview coming up about how that was the genesis for Nick and I to start our tech coaches mastermind that you hear us talking about here on the network. So check this out. I want to produce and present to you guys my interview with Danny Sunshine Bowers. My guest today is not only a fantastic podcaster of the show Better Leaders, Better Schools, but he's also a blogger, an author, and a leader amongst leaders on social media. I want to bring on the show today my friend, Danny Sunshine Bauer. Danny, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, Jeff. Thanks for having me on the show. Just happy to connect and provide some value for the listeners.
And tell us a little bit about yourself. You are doing so many amazing things these days. What's keeping you busy?
Well, these days, for the next, 12 weeks of Q1 2019, I have a goal in terms of adding to my leadership community, which I call the Mastermind. A quick goal that I think I'll finish in the first week of January to delegate some stuff in my podcast company to my friend Kelly, who's going to run the back end of things so that I could start book number 2. And then my third goal is just a fitness goal. So it's kind of how I roll with productivity. I have 3 big goals every 12 weeks, and those might change per quarter. But those are the big things I'm working on.
You know, I love that you set 3 simple but very ambitious goals. I mean, if you're looking at a little bit of fitness, a little bit of writing, a little bit of community building here. Talk to us a little bit about your show, Better Leaders, Better Schools. Of course, you can find that over at betterleadersbetterschools.com. Talk to us a little bit about some of the things that we can find on your podcast.
Yeah, so it's a weekly show, Jeff. Just like this one here. It's just a great conversation where I get to talk to high-level leaders. A lot of them happen to be in schools. Many of them lead outside of the education industry. So moving into 2019, I have an ideal guest, and I've identified those just like my goals. So I want to talk to business leaders that can stretch our thinking around leadership and give us something very practical to apply to the listener. I want to interview people that listen to the show and apply principles from what we talk about and use that as a case study. I want to amplify amazing stories of the listeners that take action. They hear something, which is great. Listen to podcasts, get inspired, but then do something with that information. I want to tell their stories because I get to hear a lot of success stories myself, but those don't necessarily get promoted through the podcast. And then the third ideal guest is a member of my leadership community, the Mastermind. I have the best seat in the house, Jeff. I get to go to all the sessions. I go to all 4 of them, and I get to see the things that the heroic school leaders are doing. And I just want to amplify their leadership and what they've learned or the mistakes they've made and how we can avoid those. They're sort of like the world's best kept secret because they might not have, 1 million followers on Twitter or all those vanity metrics, but these are rock solid stars. And some of them are a bit shy too and introverted. So I'm pushing them in 2019 to tell their story.
You know, I love the fact that your show is all about storytelling. And I think it's a good time for me to ask you, Danny, what is your story? How did you get involved in podcasting and why Better Leaders, Better Schools? What is it all about and how'd you get started?
Well, Better Leaders, Better Schools, I wanted to have basically a clear name. It's kind of a long name, so that sort of stinks. I don't know if I would do it the same way starting today, because that's a lot to type into a URL box, and blbs.com is not available, so I can't get the shortened version of that. But I wanted to be clear, like, what's this about? It's about better leadership. It's about building better schools. And this organization, the podcast, my business all started in 2015. I was listening to so many different podcasts, many of them, the things that probably people are familiar with from NPR, like, Serial was big. That basically put podcasts on the map. But, I listened to other shows as well. And then I was listening to business minded podcasts and leadership podcasts. And I had this epiphany, Jeff, that, you know, who's doing this in the education space? And there were people there. And so that was great to see. But I didn't find a show that necessarily was the exact show I wanted to listen to. And probably a lot of people that are creative start off in that way. They build something for themselves, or they create the book, the show, et cetera, that they wanted. The other background is that I was an assistant principal at the time, and I lovingly call APs around the world the redheaded stepchild, because they're overlooked and sometimes abused. And, I say that tongue in cheek, but here's the thing. If we want to have better schools and better leaders, we need to be very intentional about developing leadership skills. And what I learned as a principal is that when you go to the central office meeting, this is my lived experience, you get more added to your plate. You get a list of things to make sure you execute on and do, or you're going to get fired. And as an AP, like I said, the redheaded stepchild, you're completely overlooked. So the podcast for me was a way to accelerate my leadership development by talking to people much smarter than me with way more experience, and it worked. I really sharpened my leadership skill set. I had a bunch of amazing conversations, grew my network, and as a result, then people started to ask me for help. And that's how I got into, doing this full time and coaching school leaders. But most of it was a desire of making myself better. And as a result, I got to bring some people along for the ride, and we've all benefited.
And of course, you guys have been helping out leaders and educational professionals all across the world. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
where we're broadcasting from today. Where are you currently?
I'm in Haarlem, Netherlands. It's a long A because it's Haarlem. It's the original Harlem, I guess. And we're here just enjoying the culture. It's really relaxed. We haven't owned a car for over a year now. We were in Antwerp, Belgium, all last year. My wife is just super smart. She's a research scientist, so I go where she goes. And luckily, the type of work that I do is virtual. So who knows where we'll be next the next time we catch up, Jeff.
I did not know that was the reason. I knew that you were all around the world. I did not know it was because your wife is a wonderful professional.
Yeah. So, she has a huge heart for research and for teaching. She's really great with epidemiology and
Wow.
really focuses on diabetes and chronic conditions. That's about as far as I can talk about it before, I get a shoe thrown at me across the room. She's the expert, so I'll leave it to her.
Nice. We will certainly have to have her on another podcast to talk about all this stuff. Now, obviously, when you're traveling the world, when you're out there building podcasts and building books, one of the important things to think about is how do you build a following, right? Every new podcaster wants to talk about downloads and they want to talk about, listenership and all these different statistics, but you have a different spin on it. You've actually been working really hard and being very successful at building community.
Mm.
What is the difference between listeners and community?
To me, community, you have that relationship, right? And in the pre-chat, we were even talking about how you help some of your friends and some of the adjustments you need to make. But at the end of the day, I want to have strong relationships and a strong network. And the foundation of that is community. And I think people can tell if you're authentic or not. They can smell a fake a mile away. And even if you are able to, I don't know, based on your wizardry or whatever, bamboozle some people, you're eventually going to get found out. So I really try to just, lead with authenticity, warts and all. And I try to offer a whole bunch of free help. There's mentors out there that I follow, and lines that I like. There's this guy Ramit Sethi, and he talks about productivity, talks about building businesses and all this kind of stuff. But one of the lines that I love he has is that my free stuff is better than most everybody else's paid stuff, right? I'm not there yet. I'm going to be honest, but that's something I try to live by. So I try to create a whole bunch of quality content that's out there for free to empower and inspire people. Eventually, if they want to invest in their own development and go to one of those models where we charge, I think that I know the value's there. So that's something that I'm interested in. Um, Other stuff that I find intriguing too is just, there's this Zig Ziglar line that, you could have anything you want in life, right? If you help people get what they want, So the idea again is just all about service. So if whatever Jeff is facing or whoever I'm talking to in that moment, if I could put their needs before mine, stuff that I want sort of just naturally happens. And that's a really interesting thing. You don't have to stress out or work as hard about achieving whatever goals you have, because the goal is in serving. It's in growing your network, growing the friends, right? The people that you can call friends and have that permission, and just helping them out. And I truly believe that everything else works out for you. Of course, you have to ask too, right? Like you can't say everything's for free all the time. But in a very general sense, that absolutely works out.
Now, I love that you're talking service. That's one of those backbones that we have here at TeacherCast. From
Yeah.
day one, we've always said it's a place for teachers to help other teachers, and especially as we start off 2019, we are doing that as much as we possibly can here, and hopefully we'll be doing it even more shortly here. Now, when you say service, there's a lot of different ways that people can come over to betterleadersbetterschools.com and work with you, right? And the way I do it every single week is by subscribing to your newsletter. And I
Mm,
find that by your newsletters are a great way of building, listenership, great way of building community. Talk to
mm.
us a little bit about what people can expect when they get their weekend resource. I just got mine a few minutes ago. Um, a great set of resources. Tell us a little bit about your newsletter and how it's
Mm.
helping you build your community into your podcast and beyond.
Well, the weekend resource definitely is the most open and most popular email because I could track all that stuff and see how people engage with the content. But I believe that that's turned into a popular email because it's all stuff you could take action on, and it's rarely something that you have to pay for. From time to time, I'll say, "Hey, this is out there, and I'd like you to join," but that's 10% or less of the time. The majority of the time, I'm actually trying to promote other people's stuff, not even my own. There is a section that is content I created this week because I think that's important. And recently, I realized for the mastermind growth, I need to talk about it more. And so that has many layers to it. But one of them is I need a FAQ, a frequently asked questions, because people don't have a lot of understanding about what we do, or there are frequently asked questions. So I've been dripping out a question and answer or two throughout the weekend resource as well. But I really try to promote other people's stuff. So it might be an app that's free that I find really useful. I just found a thread on Twitter of the best apps of 2018, and so I'll be dripping that out throughout the year. There's just like fantastic, phenomenal apps that I'm legit excited to try out and test on myself, and I think the community can benefit as well. And it might be articles definitely written by other people, videos, all this kind of stuff. And like I said, some content that I've created, and also an inspiring quote, something I'm pondering, thinking about. Maybe I'll dissect it a bit and insert a little bit how I look at that quote, but a lot of times I might just share it out as well. And at the end of the day, from a high level, what I hope people are doing is seeing, I find this valuable. What if I did this for my community? So whether that's you're a podcaster trying to grow your podcast and you want to serve your community that way, or what gets me excited is I try to model effective ways of communicating from the principal's seat to your community, right? I would love to know. Now, I don't have kids yet, but let's say I have kids in the future, send them off to school. I would love to know what the principal's reading that's non-education related. That would let me know that they're a human being and maybe a way that I can connect to him or her just a bit better. I would love to know what kind of quotes they find inspiring, right? That tells me a bit about how this person thinks and operates. And again, what kind of human they are. So, sort of from a high level, that's what the weekend resource is all about as well.
You keep saying this word inspire, and you've been talking a little bit today about, the ways that we build community around it. And I got to say to everybody out there who's listening about all the great things that you have done to inspire the work that's been happening on TeacherCast. If
Oh
you've been
man.
listening to any of our shows, we've been very successful over the last couple weeks and months, I would say, is building our tech coaching mastermind. And
Woohoo!
I'll be the first to admit, the first person I went to for help on that is you. So thank you so much for helping me out and giving of your time to do all that stuff. It is not only supporting the work that we're doing here on TeacherCast, but also tech coaches around the country. We had a great first cohort. We're getting our second cohort down, and you've always been out there to help with that, and that's because you have a fantastic mastermind for leaders, don't you?
Yeah, there's one that I run for principals, assistant principals, some central office, maybe like directors of curriculum type folks. The only teachers I let in there nowadays is ones that uh, have enrolled in a certification program and want a administrative seat, or job in the next 2 years or less. Otherwise, I find that they're just not connecting as well as I want them to, and getting the full quality of what our community offers. So yeah, that's who I serve, and that's the bread and butter. The foundation of better leaders. There's 48 members right now, Jeff, from
Wow.
8 different countries around the world, and at 60 we'll be closed. And I think I'll hit that by February. Our community will grow by then. Um, Definitely sometime in Q1 2019, and then it'll just be a wait list, which I'm excited about.
I
Um,
That is awesome. I have to ask the question that I didn't get a chance to ask you, but I'm going to ask you now on the show. How do you set
yeah.
up a mastermind meeting when you have all those time zones to coordinate?
Oh, well, I just go back to when I lived in the US and stick with those and don't change them. Actually, when Miriam and I moved over to Belgium, I did switch. I had meetings Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I knew the time zone change was going to be the biggest challenge. And so I call myself Grandpa Mastermind, and I take a nap on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 8 to 10:30 so I could wake up and be fresh and give my best to the community from 11 to 2:30 in the morning, when we coach. So it depends on where you're at. Eileen, who's in China, she's in the mastermind on a Thursday morning. And that for me is a Wednesday at 11 p.m. and in Chicago, Wednesday at 4. So you start to get kind of decent with time zone conversions in your head. I make a lot of mistakes that way. And so that's why I love using links that do all that conversion for me. And like Calendly is the link I use. And every educator should have a Calendly account. You can have one for free. Set up one event, and if I'm an educator, whether a classroom teacher, tech director or principal, I would just have that in my signature line and say, hey, do you need 15 or 30 minutes of my time? Schedule a meeting here. And that's just, again, back to the service component, streamlining everything. You don't have to go back and forth, in terms of calendars. I think that's a little hack your listeners can take action on.
That is certainly a fantastic tip, one that we've been using on, I would say, in my own position as a tech coach. Hey, do you need
Nice.
something? I'm here. At the bottom of all my email signatures, it says, what do you need? How can I help you out? Now, look, this is a show all about podcasting and celebrating podcasters. I noticed that on your site, there is a page called podcasting equipment. We get the question all the time of what do you have? What do you need?
Yeah.
Talk to us. What's under your hood, Danny? What are you using the podcast these days?
Yeah, so the basic components, and everybody can check that out. Maybe that's another link I'll add to our show notes here. But I've been using the same MacBook Pro since 2015, so that one's not dead yet, and it's still running. I don't even remember what my microphone's called. I think it's called like a Samsung, because I was wondering, is it Samsung or it's near that? But it was actually what my audio engineer recommended. Um, Interestingly, guys, is that I took a step back. I used to have a uh, Blue Yeti mic, and from a quality perspective, way better than the microphone I have now. But I don't record in the studio, and I could have loud neighbors. I have a bunch of hardwood floors, so it's not an ideal recording setup, let's say. So I reduced the quality of my microphone to actually produce a higher quality show, if that makes sense.
Wow,
So
that's pretty awesome.
yeah, and the cool thing about the Samsung microphone I have, it came with a stand, it came with the pop filter. It had a USB, but also the other type of input, which I don't even know what that's called if you're putting it in a mixer. Outside of that, I used to use Skype and the Skype recorder. Since then, I've moved to Zoom, which is how we're recording this podcast. And that's just because Skype seemed to be a bit unreliable. And I already use Zoom for all my masterminds. So just, I don't know, I'm always on it. Just keep using it. Other than that, I don't know if there's a ton of stuff. I would push your listeners to think about how can you build a team to
Mm.
help you do a lot of the back end. So I don't edit any of my shows. That was the first thing I gave up. That was in spring of 2016. So the show might have been 6 months or less out there. I actually asked our friend Jethro Jones, "Who's editing your shows? You do it?" Because I was doing everything, right? That takes a ton of time,
It
and
does.
I enjoy the process, but I just know my time is more valuable spent on other things that only I can do. So I hired that out real fast, and at this point, I have people that upload the episodes, folks that write the show notes, create social media images. So a lot of things that are done from the Better Leaders sense is done by my team. I employ actually 5 people. If you get a response from me on email, if you get any response on Twitter, that's me for sure. But if it's email blast, I wrote it, but I didn't schedule it or send it. If it's a tweet and it's about Better Leaders content, probably my team came up with that. But again, if it was liked, retweeted, or responded, that was me. Um, yeah, so it's like build a team, help yourself out, so you could do only the things that you could do.
Now, you mentioned your Twitter account here. I've been wanting to ask you this for years, and I haven't quite figured out how to approach the subject. So I figured, why not? I'll just bring it up on air. Your Twitter
Yeah.
account is Alien Earbud. What's up with that?
Yeah, maybe one of those things you would change as well. But here, here's the thing. So there's a story there. The people know the story, and then they could connect the dots. So I try to tell the story every now and then. And I'm glad being on other podcasts because it comes up quite a bit. My name is Daniel Bauer, right? I was an English teacher. I like word games. And there's a word game that I used to play with my students called an anagram. And you just take the letters from a word or phrase and you mix them up. Spout as
Ah,
many words as you can. And we used to, score this type of length word or whatever, in our class. And it was a fun Friday game. Well, with Daniel Bauer, you switch up the letters, you can get Alien Earbud. I also love to draw. I'm an out of box, creative sort of thinker, and I just love the image of some weird ET alien type, entity with earbuds in, just like I have, and walking around listening to some amazing music. So that's where Alien Earbud comes from.
nice. I want to get back on the topic here, as we were saying earlier about community, building community, and as you said, these little things people only find out about you if they are knowing, subscribing, trusting, liking, grabbing your content as we do. That is an anagram. I will definitely try that out with all the kids names here. Um, we were talking earlier about 4 things that you can do to build community around your podcast. You said the first one already was just be in service,
Mm,
provide things of value, provide things for free, which I think should be at the top of everybody's list. Now, the
yeah.
second thing that you had mentioned is gratitude. Why is
Mhm.
that important for building community?
I think it's important because, you know, if you're like me, you're a recovering pessimist, maybe. you know, and at my worst, I'm a glass half empty. I'm
Really?
a, yeah, at my worst, right? Like this is not me at my best, or I can be just more negative and critical, or just struggling with anger. Some counselors, therapists, coaches call that your shadow self, right? So you have your ideal and who you are at your best, and then this like sort of opposite doppelganger. Superman had Bizarro, and so it's that kind of mentality. So I wanted to grow that. I also realized these uber successful, I mean, like crazy, crazy successful people, many of them had a very common thread. And if it wasn't, it was service and gratitude,
Hmm.
right? Like those things just go together. And I haven't met many successful people, at least the ones that I admire, that don't have those things. So I had to think to myself, well, how can I be a more naturally grateful person? And I don't know that it happens just regularly for me. So I started a gratitude journal. You know, you probably heard about the 5 minute journal.
Hmm.
That's the easiest access point, and that's just three things you're thankful for in the morning, three things that would make the day go well, daily affirmations. So I am great, maybe. Uh, and then in the evening, three things that did go well, and what could you have changed to make the day better? So that's all about ownership. Since then, my journaling technique has been evolving, and now it's an 8 step process. I only do it in the morning. I find I don't like to journal at night. I'm just ready for Netflix in bed. So no journaling for me. So it all happens in the morning. I'm gonna run through it really quick, and maybe this could be something for the listeners that they could download, because every time I post this on social media, I get the most comments, shares, and likes. So this is my template, and we'll do a annotated picture for the listeners that you could download. So first box is, what would I change from yesterday to make the day better? The second box are, what are three things I'm thankful for? So like today, that was, I slept with the phone off and the alarm not set, right? uh, Moving into downtime. So we're, going into holiday break. And so sleep, rest, and little work, and much more about family time. And I put, this week I'm enjoying yogurt and granola. So yogurt and granola has been something I haven't been eating as much for sort of that fitness goal. And during the holiday break, I'm bringing out all the goodies.
Nice.
Outside of that, three things that'll make the day great, and those are aligned to my three big goals, which we talked about earlier in this show. What's one thing I'm really excited for today? So I scan my calendar, and not necessarily the things that align and map to my big goals, but what is something I'm really, really excited for? What's a challenge today? So what is a event, or maybe a difficult conversation, or anything? Maybe it's something I'm putting off, procrastinating on. What's the challenge? How could I get past it? Who is somebody I can help today without any strings attached? So important, Jeff. So not that I'm giving to get back, but I'm giving to give. You know, I'm going to help you, and I'm not going to expect anything in return. I say a short prayer or a positive affirmation for my wife, and then I have a free spot, and that could be, it could be a quote, it could be, I don't know, a summary of what I read in the morning, it could be a drawing, like anything. It's a free spot.
That is beautiful. I would love to, after we're done recording, let's figure out how to share that with everybody here. That is absolutely amazing, and that really shows, not only just the type of person you are, but the type of product that you are. And what I mean by that is, the third thing here that we're looking at when it comes to community building, you had mentioned quality,
Mm,
right? Not just doing it for doing its sake, as you just said. Don't be nice to somebody because you want them to buy your book or subscribe to you. Be generous, be genuine, be honest and authentic with everything.
mm,
And you find that if you are walking the walk, then the walk will walk with you.
yeah.
Did that make sense? Or did that sound like Mike Brady? Anyway,
I think it made sense, Jeff.
when you say quality, what does that mean? Does that mean one thing that's awesome? Does that mean five things that are like what are you looking at here when we're talking quality? Quality of service, quality of product, quality of Danny?
Quality of everything. That's a great thing that you could, apply to all domains of your life. Uh, you can have phrases that will help you remember. So, you have to define it as an individual. My three might be your five, it's somebody's seven. But at the end of the day, I know I want to be an inch wide and a mile deep versus a mile wide and an inch deep, right? And so, for example, I was jotting down goals for 2019, and I got this story actually from Warren Buffett, and I applied it to myself. And Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway, another one of those uber successful people, he realized he didn't have a great relationship with his pilot. He'd been ignoring him, and the same guy had been flying him around in his private jet for a decade. It's like, oh man, I got to rectify this. I'm gonna start personally coaching him, help him upgrade his life and level up. So he told his pilot this, and man, the pilot was excited. So Jeff, the pilot says to Warren, well, what's my first task, right? What do I need to do? And he says, go out there and make a list of 25 things you want to accomplish this year. So the pilot, just excited, goes out and just crushes that list the first night. Second day, he's like, Warren, I've got my list. What's next? Warren says, all right, look at that list of 25 and identify your top 3 to 5 things on the list, right? And come back, whenever you're done with that. So pilot still has a ton of momentum and excitement. He runs home. He identifies and funnels that list of 25 down to the top 3 and 5. Next day, sees Warren, Mr. Buffett, I've got my top 3 to 5. What do I do next? And he goes, okay, cool. You have now identified what your goals are, and the rest is your avoid at all costs list, right? And so to me, that is the inch wide and a mile deep, because even though all those things, those are all the things he wanted to accomplish that year, I bet there wasn't anything on that list that was fluff or garbage, right? But you have to say no to really, really good, sometimes great things, so you can be exceptional at a very few amount of things. So I don't know if that's 3 or 5 or whatever, but I do know if you go deep on fewer things, you're going to do it better. The other thing with quality for me is, when I started out, I heard some people I looked up to. They said, Danny, if you're consistent with your podcast and you put the best thing you can out there, then people will start to see you as an expert and everything will take care of themselves, and it's true. It's true. Here I am talking to you and I'm doing this full time. I never believed it in that moment, 3 years ago, but it's absolutely true. And so, yes, if you're trying to build community via a podcast, then focus on quality, create the show that you love, that you're proud of, create the show first to you, and then create the show that your listeners need.
Dude, it's hard to follow up some of the things that you're saying here, but that is an awesome story there, and something that I think I am, as soon as we're done here, going to start to make my list of 25 things for this year and then whittle them down. That is a really, really powerful story. And if you guys out there are listening and you guys want to share your story or share your list of 25 things, we would certainly love to have you guys do that. You can, of course, find us on Twitter at TeacherCast, or leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. We would love to have you share your lists. Help us inspire others. Help us figure out what we can do here this year together, and really help us build that community together with everybody's support. Now, we talked about service. We talked about gratitude. We talked about quality. Now the one that's, I think, the hardest. And I got to tell you, it's the hardest for me, right? Because, we got job, we got family, we got podcast, we got life, we got all these things. Danny, what is that fourth thing that people need to be thinking about when building community?
Yeah, it was embedded in the third. I was talking a bit about it, but it's the quality plus consistency, right? You need both to build a powerful community and then to be seen as an expert. In to make it clear, I wasn't doing it to be seen as an expert. Just people said, if you do this, offer quality consistently, people will see you as an expert. And the reason is because people can trust you. If you say, I'm going to do this every Wednesday, or like my second podcast, the school leadership series, comes out every weekday, people can count on that, right? And I've trained my team to release it at the same time. It's really, really early in the morning in the US, so you would never know. But my goal is when you wake up that the podcast is there if you subscribe. So that consistency piece is really important. For me, I have a number of, conflicts or challenges as well. And so what I have found to work is if it gets on my calendar, then it's going to get done. And you'd be surprised how much focus that gives you. And you don't necessarily need all the time that you think, right? Because I forget if that's called Parkinson's law or something else, but a task will expand, right, to the amount of time that you allot to it. And so, for example, when I wrote my first book, Jeff, that was just an hour a day for every day for 12 weeks. And at the end of 3 months, I had a 48,000 word manuscript. So you would think that maybe it would take a lot longer, but it only took 3 months. And so that's a part of my system that I built off of a great book called The 12-Week Year. But I would say get it on your calendar. You don't necessarily need all the time that you think you need. Uh, if you're creating something and trying to build a community, maybe that stuff towards the end of the day that doesn't add a ton of value to your life, it just helps you relax a bit. So I mentioned Netflix,
Mhm.
earlier. Reduce that 70% and go to bed earlier and wake up with that extra time, right? And put that behind your passion project or your full-time gig, whatever that is that you're trying to build. That's how I would do consistency. And then the last piece too, since we're talking about building community, doing it alone is stupid. Don't do it alone. The number one enemy of excellence is isolation. So if you want to succeed and you want to build that consistency and all of that, get around community. And maybe you form that on your own. Maybe that's within your local school or some type of organization or a church. Or maybe you join some type of community that I provide or Jeff provides. But the point is that you get yourself around people that are going to check in. They want you to win, but they're also going to call out your stuff when you're, blowing some BS, and they're going to, hold you accountable, I guess is the nice way to say it.
Build that community, build the community not only of your listeners but of your supporters, but those who you can count on. That's such great advice out there. If anybody has anything that they'd like to ask Danny, again, you can reach out to us over here on TeacherCast on Twitter at TeacherCast. Danny, where can people reach out and find you these days?
Well, I got the weird social media handle that everybody remembers now. So that's at Alien Earbud. The blog is a great place to go, betterleadersbetterschools.com. And there's a bunch of freebies that you can download, and that'll get you on the weekend resource email. Or feel free just to email me directly, Daniel at betterleadersbetterschools.com, and I will reply.
And of course, we're going to have all of the links to this and all of our shows over on teachercast.net. This is Educational Podcasting Today, episode number 31. Guys, we want to say thank you so much for being here on the show and making TeacherCast your home for professional development in 2019. Danny, thank you so much. Again, not only for inspiring us here to create the mastermind and to reach out and build that taproot to help tech coaches out there, but really for everything that you're doing out there, literally in the world. There's a lot of great stuff. And guys, I can't say it enough. Check out his website, betterleadersbetterschools.com. Check out his podcast. Get on his mailing list. Every Sunday morning we get a mailing, and it is absolutely fantastic and wonderful to use. I get a lot of stuff out of it. Danny, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jeff, for having me. It's a pleasure.
And of course, we want to say thank you guys out there for making TeacherCast your home for professional development. If you guys have a podcast and would like to be featured on Educational Podcasting Today, you can, of course, reach out to us by email, feedback@teachercast.net, or leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. And you can follow this show and all of our podcasting things over at educationalpodcasting.today. And on behalf of everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.